Hey, let's build a scarf joint neck. Hey, this is Paul from Les Barnes Guitars and welcome to my shop. So I thought we'd go on a small journey and show you how I build a scarf joint neck. So if everything goes as planned and I don't forget to push that button on that camera, I tend to forget about pushing that button and I miss footage. I'm working on it. But anyway, what I'm going to do is take you through a series of videos on how I build a scarf joint neck. Now, a scarf joint neck, if anyone doesn't know, a scarf joint neck is basically like a two-piece construction neck. You take a blank of wood like this, and this is some hard maple. And what you would do is you would cut an angle and cut an angle off of this end of the board, flip it over, and glue it back. In a sense, it would have, once it's glued back, then it's glued back as an angle. Depending on what angle you want, everyone's different. My necks, I generally do a 13-degree headstock angle for a guitar that's gonna have a non-tremolo bridge. If it's gonna have a tremolo bridge, I'll do one at 9 degrees. So what I'll do is I'll pick a spot here. I get a specific measurement for my headstocks to allow enough material up here for the headstock, and I'll cut this on an angle. Now you can do this different ways. I've seen people do them on a table saw. I do them on a bandsaw, and I actually have a jig that I put it in that sets it the angle I want. I can change it to any angle I need, but I just use it to the two different angles that I build at. And it makes a nice clean cut, nice straight cut, and it's very little sanding you have to do after, and you glue it up and everything. Anyways, I'm getting too deep right now, but I guess what I'll do is I'll just start rolling that camera, making sure I push that button so that you guys can see how this is done. I'll start out with the measurements, and we'll see how far this journey takes us. Hopefully, we'll get it all the way to the end. Have some faith in me. All right. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the series. So here's the piece we're going to use. This is actually a two-piece hard maple neck blank. You can see the glue line right there. You can do 2, 3, 5 pieces, whatever it takes to make your thickness here that you need for your headstock. This is actually 2 pieces, and it's vertical grain. It's quarter sawn or rift sawn. Either way, each piece that I glue up like that will be cut in a vertical grain fashion this way. Anyway, what I did with this is I looked it over, and I found this side to be the prettiest. I like this side for the back of the neck. So this is going to end up being the headstock front, and this will be the back of the neck after it's cut. I gave myself enough space right here. I usually go about 7 inches or so. It depends on how long your piece of wood is. You might have to tweak it to try to get the most you can out of the lumber. But I always cut these to 31.5 inches, and it always works out for all my necks. So, and you can see my headstock fits in there with plenty of wiggle room. So I established that line. And then I take my my angle rule and I set it at 9 degrees. This is going to be a neck that's going to go on a tremolo type guitar. So it's going to get a 9-degree angle. If it was going on a non-trem guitar, it would be 13. So I draw this line, comes up to this point, and I draw another line across there. So this is where I'm going to start my cut on the bandsaw. I'll cut this off. This whole piece flips over, glues back, and now it's an angle. So let me take this to the bandsaw and show you how that's done. I actually have a jig for it. These pieces go together like this. This is the bottom, this is the headstock end. And there you have it. You have your headstock angle established. Now, this surface right here, even though that blade I have on there is a really nice blade and it leaves very little kerf marks, it still needs to be sanded. So that's going to be sanded out, and then just a little bit on the back side here. This is already pretty much ready to go to be glued on there, but this is the one I have to prep up. Now, I don't really have to prep this one so much right now, this face, because later on I'm going to run this across my flat sander here, and we're going to get that all squared up and flattened out. Okay, so I'm going to take this piece to the flat sander. Actually, I'm going to take this one too. I'm still going to run that over the flat sander and flatten out a little bit. One thing I don't want to do is I don't want to lose this line right here. Got to make sure it stays squared up. If it skews on me a little bit, I'll have to fix it, which is pretty much straight on. That's pretty good on this tool. You don't want to get too aggressive with it. What I'll do is I'll take it to the bench and I'll work this by hand now with a block. Okay, so I drew a line on here, and just to keep track of, it's a little bit of a heavy line, but just to keep track of where that edge is, so I keep it square. I'm just going to write it. I'm going to do a lighter line on that, right there. And I'm going to take a piece of 120 grit sandpaper and a flat block, and I'm going to sand this out. I'm going to pay attention to that line, keeping everything square. And then this one here, I'm just going to hit it with the sandpaper as well. I'll do the whole length of it, but it's not real important up that end. It's real important on this end. Right here. This is where the gluing surface is going to be. Right here and here. And that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit more, and then we'll get back to the glue up. So now I've clamped it up with a couple clamps here into position. I paid close attention to the center line of both pieces of wood on the front here and on the back there, because I want them perfectly lined up. And then I marked a couple spots here where I'm going to drill some holes. I'm going to put some screws in there. At the time when we glue up, the screw's going to hold it all together, and then I'm going to clamp it. And the screw's going to keep it from sliding around, because when you glue up things, the fluid of the glue, it makes things kind of wiggle around a little bit, so it's going to keep everything sturdy. So that's next. We're going to drill some holes and do that. All right, so that's established. Let's go ahead and glue it up. Getting the surface ready. Both surfaces. We're going to get a little bit of glue applied to them. I should have used my roller. This will work though. All right. It's looking good. Take these two pieces and kind of slide them around on each other here. Kind of spreads the glue out some. Now off camera, I actually countersunk these holes right here because when I clamp it up with the block, I don't want them sticking out. And find this hole here. This one too. Now these screws just keep everything in place. And they provide a little bit of clamping force also. They're not just there, they're there for two different reasons. But most of the clamping force is going to come from the clamps and the block, of course. I think I got a bad screw here. Something up with that screw. But I'm going to press on with it. You see that squeeze out. Anyway, that's not going to move. Let's clean some of this up a little bit so we don't make too much of a mess. And underneath here, get a little squeeze out. All right, now here's my block to clamp it with. Just make sure it doesn't get stuck. So we're gonna push this glue off that side there. There's a slight bit of a little hangover there. That's on purpose because I want to sand this thing flush later. All right, here we go. Pretty simple. Now it doesn't take a whole lot of clamping pressure. You don't have to smoke this thing down. I've actually found that smoking it down like that, sometimes it would actually make it move. Even though we had screws in it, they would still move. I gotta get past that screw. There we go. And I'm clamping a little more towards the center corner because a lot of this is going to be waste and cut off. So I'll put several clamps on here. It's not really the pressure, high pressure, amount of pressure. It's just equal, even pressure all the way along it. And one there. I'm probably going to put a couple more on. Get a little bit of squeeze out. Wipe that up. I like to check the alignment. It's looking really good. Really good. I like it. All this wiping up ain't really all that important, but I do it anyways. That's just me. Let's put a couple more down the ends over here. One there. One there. All right. There you have it. I'll let this sit in here for about, I don't know, an hour or two. I got some other things to do in the shop. I'll just let it sit. I'll pull it off this bench. It doesn't have to sit on this bench. But, and then we'll come back to it. Well, I've been working around in the shop and it's been about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. I pulled the neck out of the clamps. I'll pull the clamps off the neck, I should say. And here you have it. Now these holes right here, these 4 holes, they're outside of the pattern. They're outside of the template for the neck. So they'll be cut out of the way. You won't see them anymore. It came out good. It's nice and lined up, nice and square. The glue line looks good, nice and tight. Really happy with the way it came out. Really, it's nothing to it. So what needs to be done next? Well, the rest of this neck needs to be leveled out. This part of the neck that I glued onto this part of the neck is a little bit proud right here. And it was done on purpose because I want a nice clean joint, a nice clean glue line. So we'll level that out. And then we'll go ahead and put the truss rod, we'll route for the truss rod. And we'll take it as far as we can in that video. We'll see where that goes. Wherever we leave off on that, we'll go to the next video. Okay? So, if you like what you saw here today, as always, hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe so you can keep up with what's going on. And I'd like to thank you for joining me here at Les Mouse Guitars, where custom is what it's all about. See ya.